I remember so well one of those times when the very concept of our democracy was at stake. I happened to be 3 years out of law school when Dr. Martin Luther King was locked up in jail in Birmingham for simply trying to gain the right to vote and the right to a decent livelihood for his people. And in those times when we treated millions of our citizens less than second class, Dr. Martin Luther King had serious doubts that our democratic system would survive. And rightly so. Maybe we didn't think it, but he did and his people did. And when he went around talking to us, he told us an old story. And I think he's told us this story is a warning, a story about another nation, a nation with great promise, and a nation that no longer existed because it has strayed from its values. The year was about 900 BC. The Jews, the children of Israel, had, after being held as slaves in Egypt, had gone from place to place receiving awful treatment. And finally, they built a great city called a city-state back then. And in that city, with high walls around to protect it, they had a banking system, a judicial system, they had law enforcement, they had an education system, very much like today. And they had a marketplace in the middle of this town where people from far and wide, villages outside of this great city, brought their produce to sell. And there was one farmer who arrived at those gates early in the morning with his wagon laden to get a good place in the market to put his goods out. And as he waited for those gates to open, he saw things that really bothered him. He saw able-bodied men and women reaching out, begging for a few grains from his wagon because they were hungry. And upon inquiry, he learned that if you didn't belong to the right group, you didn't get a job at all or a good job to feed your family. And when this farmer got into the marketplace and he put his goods out in the stall, he heard grumbling from the people that walked by. And he learned and listened, and he found that they were upset because those who went before the court system that were connected to the right people got a better deal than if you had no connection with the right people. And those who with the right group didn't get arrested for what other people did who wasn't in the favored group of people. And this bothered this farmer because he knew the great promise that this city was built upon, this country. And he asked for an opportunity to speak to the leaders of the community. He was a man of some means and reputation in his village outside those walls, so they gave him a chance to speak to the so-called, maybe the city council, is today we'd probably call it. I think most of you probably know who this farmer is, who he was. He was a biblical prophet Amos. And Amos stood before the leaders of his ancient city, and he said, look, folks, y'all got a good thing going here. But if you don't treat all the people among you fairly, you're not going to get to keep what you have and pass on to future generations. It's going to be taken away from you. And I predict that unless you're fair, one day there won't be one stone left upon another of this great city. And he spoke to them in the words that Dr. King spoke, and I heard him speak myself as I stood before him in the Deep South in the 1960s. Amos said, folks, look, don't be satisfied until justice rolls down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream. That's what this organization is all about. It's all about a thing called justice. And it's so easy to get set in our ways, let things go. How many of us, quite honestly, and myself included, would represent the detainees in Guantanamo Bay because they're not getting an opportunity to have a trial? Who would be the John Adams of the day, representing the redcoats, the most hated people in our community at the time. It takes courage. It takes lawyers willing to take a stand. And those lawyers among us and those PR firms they employ that tell us that we should run from the name lawyer and that we should run from the name trial lawyer, all I can say is I'm proud to be a lawyer. I'm proud to be a trial lawyer. And unless we continue to uphold our profession and be proud of who we are and take on those cases that will let those people that doubt us understand that without trial lawyers, tyranny truly will prevail. Congratulations, Judge, and thank you so much.
Well, this concludes a wonderful day here at the Water's Edge. Attorney Morris Dees, thank you so much for being with us and sharing those words of wisdom with us. Drive home safely, keep well, keep the faith, and we'll work hard next year for justice.